This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Ling Bai's expression changed. He did not expect that his plan to threaten Jiang Churen and force the Red Moon City to compromise would end up like this. With Jiang Churen's personality, he would never take such a big risk to break off with him. The main culprit was Ning Keyue, who killed Jianan in a flash and used her power to subdue him. He was in a very passive situation now. Jiang Churen and Ning Keyue were on his left and right, and the three old monsters of the Red Moon City were blocking the sky above him. Under the joint attack of the 5 Peerless Masters, he might not even be able to escape, let alone win. He had been unrivaled in the world for so many years, but this was the first time he felt that he might be defeated. The tyrannical Sky Tiger smiled bitterly. The mission this time was too complicated. In the end, I didn't have a good ending. This is the punishment from the heavens. It's hard to even retire. Senior, Xiaoba laughed, it'll be great to have so many experts accompanying us to the netherworld. It'll be fun to have company. Maybe the boss will come with us. Can't you say something nice? The tyrannical Sky Tiger laughed and scolded. If the boss dies, the 8 symbols will be completely finished. The two of them could be considered as weirdos. They still had the mood to tease in such a tense atmosphere. Perhaps they knew that they would definitely die, so they became relaxed instead. Ling Bai's expression changed several times before he finally said, "You win. I'll compromise. State your conditions and let the 3 of us leave." What? Boss, you can't compromise. Xiaoba was shocked and quickly said. We can't lose the prestige of the 8 elephants. Our deaths are not to be regretted, you can kill more people of the Red Moon City to be buried with us. Ling Bai's face was full of black lines. He said angrily, shut up. Compromise? Aren't you a small world that has existed since ancient times? Ling Bai is a titled martial sovereign, Ning Keyue sneered. The Red Moon City doesn't dare to accept this compromise. The people of Red Moon City in the surroundings were all fired up. Since he was able to force a titled martial emperor to compromise personally, and they had all experienced it personally, they would die without any regrets. Ling Bai's face was filled with anger, and his eyes were filled with coldness. He said coldly, don't try to show off in front of me. You, Ning Keyue, don't want to see both of us get hurt. However, your determination won. If there was a possibility that you wouldn't win, you wouldn't have chosen to fight me head-on. The sneer on Ning Keyue's face didn't fade, but she still nodded and said, no one is willing to watch their family and subordinates be killed. If you want to compromise, you can do it. First, you have to announce to the world that you, Ling Bai, have lost in front of our Red Moon City. You have lost fair and square. Second, swear not to kill anyone in my Red Moon City for the rest of my life. Once you've done these 2 things, the 3 of you can leave in peace. What a joke. Ling Bai was furious and said, to announce to the world, how dare you think of that? If this is the condition, then let's fight to the death. Do you think I'm afraid of you in a life and death battle? Ning Keyue sneered. The golden sword in her hand spread out, and her melodious singing faintly rang out. The conditions had fallen through, and the atmosphere became heavy again. Yunxiao secretly breathed a sigh of relief. No matter how tense the atmosphere seemed, he knew that the fight was over. The result of this battle was actually unbearable for both sides. They would not fight if they could. Since they both had the heart to compromise, they would not fight. What was missing now was a common condition, and Ning Keyue's sword singing was just a bluff. What do you think we should do then? Jiang Churen asked. Ling Bai snorted coldly. Let's forget about today's matter. I'll pretend that nothing has happened. I won't hold a grudge against your Red Moon City. That's my biggest condition. Jiang Churen sneered, Ling Bai, I can understand that you're used to being arrogant. However, there are still many places in this world that you can't afford to offend. The matter of announcing to the world can be removed. As long as you swear that you will not kill anyone in the Red Moon City for the rest of your life, and will not step into the Red Moon City for the rest of your life, you can leave. Otherwise, you can stay. I have no other conditions. Jiang Churan was the type of practical leader who placed the big picture first. He was relatively easy to talk to. Ling Bai frowned. He knew that this was Jiang Churan's bottom line. Whether they fought or retreated, it was all up to him. If they were to fight, other than these 5 peerless experts, everyone else present would instantly turn into ashes. He didn't care about these things. He only cared about how confident he was in escaping from the 5 of them and how long it would take for him to recover from his injuries. All of this was extremely unknown, because he had always done things with great confidence in his life. He had never been so passive before. He finally gave in and said, "All right, I agree. I have an additional condition. Even Dongmen Yuan must be released safely." Although Dongmen Yuan had lost his soul-devouring banner, Gaoju's cultivation was still there. As long as he ran to the soul-devouring sect a few more times, he could easily get hundreds of millions of living souls. All right, sure. Jiang Churan agreed readily. Dongmen Yuan could be captured or released, and was not a threat to them. However, it seemed that he had to explain it to the sect master of the Soul Devourer sect, Huangfu Bai. Ling Bai raised his hand and swore, "I, Ling Bai, will not kill a single person in the Red Moon City for the rest of my life. I will not step into the Red Moon City for the rest of my life." This oath was like an endless humiliation, making him ashamed and angry. He said angrily, "But if I see any blind people from the Red Moon City outside, don't blame me for cutting off their limbs and crippling their dantian." Everyone's heart trembled. Even Jiang Churan felt a headache coming on. He secretly blamed himself for not being careful with his words, allowing the other party to take advantage of the loophole. However, the words he had said were like spilled water. How could he take them back? Ning Qiue snorted and said, "Sure, but if you hurt any of the disciples of the Red Moon City, they will hunt you down no matter where you are. However, according to the oath, you can't kill us. This is a good deal." "Humph, do you think I'm afraid of you?" What a joke. He left a murderous look in his eyes and turned to leave. As soon as Ling Bai left, the killing intent in the entire space disappeared. The cold air on everyone's bodies gradually dissipated, and the air finally warmed up. Everyone was in a daze for a long time. In such a short period of time, they had walked through the gates of hell, and each and every one of them felt extremely fortunate to be able to survive. Jiang Ruobing hurriedly ran over and said, "Father, Master. Why didn't you kill him? Don't mind my comfort." Pa. Jiang Churan suddenly slapped her and sent her flying. He said angrily, "It's all your fault. Change your clothes immediately and go to the arena." Ning Qiue frowned and stood in front of Jiang Ruobing. She said coldly, "You hit your own daughter after being threatened. You're very capable, city lord." Although today's matter was extremely dangerous, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. The matter with the Death God's 8 elephants has come to an end, and it has also shaken the reputation of our Red Moon City. I'll have people write all kinds of stories about this and spread it to the entire realm of heavenly martial arts. Let the world know that Ling Bai has suffered a great loss in our Red Moon City. Lady Qiue, Xiaoba said embarrassedly, "I don't think that's a good idea. As a peerless master, can't you be more low-key?" Pa. Xiaoba's face was smacked heavily, and his entire body was sent flying, before he fell hard on the ground. Ning Qiue stared at him coldly and said, "If you don't want me to slap you into a pig's head again, then shut up. Follow Hangfeng and move that rat, Dongmen Yuan. If he doesn't leave, kill him on the spot. It won't be considered a breach of contract." Xiaoba was covered in cold sweat. He covered his mouth with one hand and didn't dare to make a sound. He remembered how Ning Qiue had slapped him into a pig's head last time. He shivered and followed Ning Hangfeng with the tyrannical sky tiger. They went to the prison in the city. Seeing that the matter had been settled, the 3 colored lights in the sky finally stopped spinning and turned into 3 streams of light. They fell into the city one after another and disappeared without a trace. Thank you, elders, for your help. Jiang Churan quickly said. There was no response from the sky. From the moment the three people appeared to the moment they left, they did not say a single word. The three of them were the elders of Jiang Churan and the others. They had long devoted themselves to cultivating martial arts. If it was not for the invasion of a peerless expert like Ling Bai, they would never have come out. Jiang Ruobing covered her red face and hid behind Ning Kuyue. She begged pitifully, Master, I don't want to go to the joust for a spouse festival. It's not up to you. Ning Kuyue's face turned cold. She reached out and wiped Jiang Ruobing's face, and the red and swollen area was mostly healed. Then, she pointed her finger and a ray of green light shot into Jiang Ruobing's shoulder. Jiang Ruobing shrieked in pain and said, Master, why did you hit me? I didn't hit you, Ning Kuyue said coldly. I just left a mark on you. That way, even if you run to the end of the world, I'll be able to sense you immediately. Jiang Ruobing was in despair when she heard that. She knew that it was impossible to escape, and she looked aggrieved. Ning Kuyue glanced at Yunxiao and praised, when Ling Bai released his power, even I could feel the fear from Hongfeng's heart. You were the only one who didn't feel any fear because you were the closest to me. I'm both confused and impressed. Her words immediately attracted Jiang Churan's gaze, and everyone looked at her in surprise. Yunxiao wiped his sweat and said in embarrassment, Actually, I was scared silly. I don't know what fear is anymore. Oh, so you were scared silly. Everyone sneered a few times before retreating back to the city. Jiang Churan said, Sister Kuyue, Ruobing is waiting for you to bring her over. I'll go over first. We don't want to leave for too long and cause people to speculate. Ning Kuyue nodded slightly, and she turned into a ray of light and left. Ning Kuyue gave Yunxiao a cold glance. Knowing that he was talking nonsense, she said, the arena tournament is about to end. Are you really not going to participate? She grabbed Jiang Ruobing and lifted her chin with her fingers. Look at this little girl, she's quite pretty, aren't you tempted? Master. Jiang Ruobing's face suddenly turned purple. She was so embarrassed that she ran away and hit Ning Kuyue with her fists. Yunxiao's face was dark. I'm tempted, but I can't do anything if I don't have the strength. I'll go and take a look, and I'll just finish something. He was talking about Jiang Ruome's treatment. With Ning Kuyue's help, he did not have to worry about being found out. Everyone flew towards the Red Moon City. After an intense battle, Ruan Zimao had defeated Li Yunxiao, but he had also lost a lot of vitality. With the return of Jiang Churan and the tricolored light, everyone's thoughts came back to themselves. Under Ning Kuyue's arrangement, Jiang Ruobing successfully replaced the fake bride. She angrily pulled off her red veil and angrily sat at the side, not saying a word. She shot a fierce look at Ruan Zimao on the stage. With a wry smile, Ruan Zimao turned his head away from her, only to find that Yunxiao was also in the stands, sitting right next to Ning Kuyue. He was shocked and looked over with a puzzled look. Yunxiao smiled and gave him a reassuring look. Only then did Ruan Zimao breathe a sigh of relief and feel at ease. Ruan Zimao has won. Are there any more matches? Jiang Bieli asked. Zhu Xuanqi then slowly walked up to the stage, he smiled and said, Brother Zimao, I'm sorry. I'm going to take advantage of this. Ruan Zimao stared at him coldly and laughed, pick up a bargain? I'm afraid I'll pick up a pile of shit. After he finished speaking, he asked to rest. After taking a few medicinal pills, he sat down cross-legged to regulate his breathing. Who do you think will win in the end? Ning Kuyue asked softly. It should be Ruan Zimao, Yunxiao said. If I'm not mistaken. Oh. You think so highly of Zimao too? Ruan Hongyu, who was sitting in the front, turned her head and gave Yunxiao a faint look as she said, You are the city lord of Yanwu, right? I'm very interested in your method of treating the curse in Ruame's body. Yunxiao smiled faintly and said, Ruan Zimao is a smart man. He never does anything he is not confident in. He must have a way to deal with Zhu Xuanqi. Otherwise, Zhu Xuanqi would not be in the ring now. As for the method to dispel the technique, I'm sorry, but I can't tell you the secret technique that was passed down from my ancestors. When the surrounding people heard this, they all felt that it made sense and revealed strange expressions. Ruan Hongyu sneered and said coldly, "What do you mean?" It sounded as if Zimao had used some tricks to win. All the heroes in the world are here, and everyone has eyes. Ning Qiues snorted coldly and said, "How is that wrong? Why don't I see Baiming Lifeng or Chang Haomiao?" Ruan Hongyu was even more furious when she heard her rebuking her. She snorted. "My daughter is also the world's #1 beauty, anyone would be moved." Was it strange that someone didn't want to participate? More than half of the 7 stars, 5 heroes, and 4 prodigies of the younger generation were here. It was rare that all of them had to be here. If one person doesn't come, it means that Zimao is playing tricks. Jiang Churan immediately felt a headache coming on. The two women were in the same drama, and they would never end their argument. Furthermore, if they continued to argue like this, it would only damage the reputation of the Red Moon City. He shouted, "All of you shut up. How are you going to let everyone watch the game if you keep on chattering?" The two women snorted coldly and no longer spoke. They were only giving Jiang Churan face outside. If there was no one else, they would not have stopped shouting. Jiang Churan, on the other hand, gave Yunxiao a surprised look, slightly surprised by his observation. At this moment, Ruan Zimao, who was on the thunder platform, had adjusted his breathing for a while. With the effect of the elixir, all parties had recovered to the extreme. He suddenly opened his eyes and laughed coldly, "Brother Xuanqi, let our battle put an end to this arena battle." Zhu Xuanqi's eyes were burning with flames of war, his calm attitude immediately disappeared. He said word by word, "As you wish." As soon as he finished speaking, Ruan Zimao finally attacked first under a vast emperor's pressure. The yuan power on his sword rippled like autumn water, like raging waves, engulfing the last great enemy in front of him. The head of the Eastern region's 7 stars represented the strongest of the entire Eastern region's younger generation. Zhu Xuanqi was only the second of the 4 prodigies of the North region. This was a battle between the young powerhouses of the 2 regions. Whether it was the competition itself or the intention of the competition, he could not lose. The battle fire in Zhu Xuanqi's eyes burned. He circulated his inner qi and a red fire sword appeared in front of him. It created a sky full of sparks and hit the autumn water. The impact of the 2 different elements caused a huge fluctuation. Ruan Zimao's eyes flashed coldly as he faced the force of the impact and shouted, "One sword to level the river." The cold shadow of the sword swept across the sky, and the barrier on the ring shone brightly. The sword spirit of the sword in Ruan Zimao's hand awakened. It was in sync with his mind and soul. It circulated smoothly, and the sword and body became one. There were all kinds of exclamations from the audience, full of praise. He really didn't use his full strength in the battle with Liu Yuxing just now. This is the true power of the leader of the 7 stars of the Eastern region. They're so strong. They've already surpassed the younger generation. They represent the top existences of the continent. Under Ruan Zimao's pressure, Zhu Xuanqi was in danger at every step. However, he used his strange movement technique to survive in the cracks. He kept waiting for the opportunity to attack. As long as Ruan Zimao stopped for a moment, he would counterattack. From time to time, flames would burst out. Ning Qiue frowned and said, "This Zhu Xuanqi is smart. He knows how to play to his strengths and avoid his weaknesses. However, he lacks courage. How long will this kind of fighting last? With their strength, I'm afraid they'll fight for days and nights." "Courage is often accompanied by bad results," Yunxiao said with a smile. "Both of them are calculative. If they were to fight head-on, Zhu Xuanqi's chances of winning would be lower. Of course, he would choose a way with a higher chance of winning. After all, this wasn't a simple competition. It involved a major event like a marriage alliance." However, Yunxiao's eyes narrowed slightly. Ruan Zimao will not allow this to happen. "He must have a way," he said. Ruan Hongyu was a little surprised, and a hint of fear flashed in her eyes. She became vigilant against Yunxiao's observation. On the stage, Ruan Zimao's sword Qi was dancing. Under his continuous attacks, he laughed coldly. Brother Xuanqi, are you playing a game with me? Brother Zimao's moves are too strong, I don't dare to take them on. I can only retreat in order to advance. Zhu Xuanqi's figure flashed and he smiled. If you don't dare to accept, why not admit defeat? I'm too obsessed with martial arts. I want to see the 7-star leader. Then watch to your heart's content. Ruan Zimao suddenly withdrew his sword aura and the heaven wave mirror appeared in his left hand. He pointed it at the sky and a vast aura surged out. The entire stage was under the mirror's light and the scene between the two began to change inexplicably. An illusory formation. Zhu Xuanqi was shocked. Isn't this illusory formation supposed to aid cultivation? Even if it can attack, it's useless against me. We'll have to see if it's useful. Ruan Zimao sneered. Flat plains. He raised his long sword high and shouted. The sword Qi swept across and created thousands of layers of attacks. They were like 10,000 galloping horses, slashing down from the sky. Zhu Xuanqi furrowed his brows slightly. He used his body technique and was about to dodge. Suddenly, he was shocked to find that the sword's power had split into thousands of swords, slashing from all directions. More and more swords fell like rain. A drop of cold sweat trickled down his cheek. Such a sword momentum, was this the effect of an illusion? What was even more terrifying was that he couldn't tell the difference between real and fake. Zhu Xuanqi's potential burst out in an instant. The long sword in his hand turned into a flying rainbow, like a colorful cloud crossing the sky. It condensed into a sword aura around his body, and suddenly slashed out. Boom! The two swords collided. Zhu Xuanqi's foundation was slightly weaker, and he was forced to retreat. After Ruan Zimao's sword had succeeded, his body turned into a faint green smoke and dissipated. His figure could not be seen in the entire illusory formation. Zhu Xuanqi's expression finally changed. The advantage of his movement technique turned into a disadvantage. In the illusionary formation, he could not catch Ruan Zimao's figure at all, unless he broke this heaven wave shadow. He waved the long sword in his hand, sending out sword Qi that surrounded his body. He was ready to use his ultimate skill to break the formation. Suddenly, a foot came down from the sky and touched his sword. Ruan Zimao laughed and said, You're finally willing to make a move? Brother Zimao, isn't it unfair for you to use such a treasure to hit me? Zhu Xuanqi's expression changed slightly. Fair. Profound level weapons are also a part of one's strength. Ruan Zimao sneered. His sword fell into his hand and pointed at Zhu Xuanqi. The latter suddenly poured his origin energy into the sword, sending him flying. Then, the sword Qi soared into the sky and fiercely collided with each other. Bang! The power of Zhu Xuanqi's sword was knocked back, and the Qi and blood in his body trembled as he retreated. Zhu Xuanqi, there are many ways to defeat you, but I don't have the patience to waste my time with you. Let's decide the winner with one sword. Ruan Zimao became a little anxious. If he could step over this stone in front of him, he would be the champion. The sword light in his hand became more rapid. The sword spirit and his mind became one, and the Qiankuan sword finger pointed upwards. One sword to level the river. Zhu Xuanqi's face was also extremely solemn. He knew that he could not avoid this sword. The potential in his body burst out at this moment. The sword force seemed to have a life of its own, constantly roaring and emitting waves of malevolent intent. Boom, boom, boom. In the final sword attack, both of them used their ultimate moves. The collision of water and fire turned into a violent sea of sword Qi, breaking through the illusion of skywave reflection and returning to the ring, shaking the defense slowly. The two of them separated after a single strike, their faces pale. Zhu Xuanqi spurted out a mouthful of blood. He bitterly shook his head and said, Your strength is indeed stronger than mine. I admit my defeat. Blood trickled down the corner of Ruan Zimao's mouth. He said coldly, I won't send you off. Zhu Xuanqi calmed the surging elemental energy in his body and slowly walked down the stage. Although he was the loser, he received a huge round of applause and cheers. Yes, only this battle is worth watching. Even though Ruan Zimao's chances of winning are higher without the heaven wave shadow reflection, it's hard to be so decisive. Ning Qiuet began to analyze the situation. Victory is in sight, and he can't help but hug his bride, Yunxiao said with a smile. That's why he's so anxious. Otherwise, with his usual temperament, he would have won even if the battle dragged on. Ning Qiuet looked at him and sighed. As long as you don't go on stage, the competition will end here. Ruobing is my beloved disciple, so I'd rather she marry you. I'm afraid I won't have the fortune to do so, Yunxiao shook his head and smiled. I'm afraid I won't be able to. Ruan Zimao won. Is there anyone else who wants to fight? Jiang Bieli shouted. The moment his voice rang out, the entire place fell silent. Even though Ruan Zimao was currently injured, the martial arts technique that he had just displayed was already unrivaled. None of the younger generation dared to compete with him.